My name is Stuart Easton. Some of you have not been on our webinars before. Most of you probably have, I think. I recognize most of the names. So we do two webinars a month. So I run a company called TransparentChoice. I spend most of my time doing that. And we do portfolio management software, benefit management software, that kind of stuff, project prioritization, all those sorts of things. The things that complement your PPM tool, most PPM tools don't do a great job of that. We knock it out the park, advert over. The rest of my time, I spend bouncing around the world, talking about rubber ducks and topics that PMOs care about at conferences. And I am absolutely privileged to meet some amazing people on that journey, including today's speakers, today's panelists. Mike, I've known you the longest. Jesse, we actually met face-to-face for the first time in LA last year, I think. And Gabriela, we had the chance to meet face-to-face at the Global Summit in Phoenix tail end of last year, which was awesome. The reason that we have these particular speakers today is that these are three of the team, the core team, that created this thing called PMBOK 8. And as I said earlier, what I want to do is I want to dig in a little bit more into, yeah, sure, what's different? Why does it matter? But from the PMO's point of view. So I invited them along. They very graciously joined us. So I'm not going to introduce the speakers. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. But I'm going to do it with a particular question, which is I'd like you to introduce each of you, introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, but also tell us why you were part of the team. What was it that made you a special member of that team that put the PMBOK 8 together? And Gabrielle, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay.
Okay, so first of all, Stuart, Jesse, Mike, I'm honored actually to participate in this amazing webinar, and I'm really thankful for all the guests and attendees that are actively sharing their location, their weather, and basically, I'm coming from really small country of Lithuania. We have less than 3 million of people. It's located just above the Poland in Europe, and personally, my whole adult life worked with projects, with project management for the last 14 years. And half of my experience was related as project manager work. And then I switched to portfolio and PMO positions. And basically, it's mostly related to infrastructure projects, also some IT projects, some PMO establishment, portfolio establishment projects. And basically, I'm also really keen on sustainability and new digital technologies. So I think this was also like the reason why I came to this amazing family, if I can say that, of people who worked on PMBOK 8 and had the amazing opportunity to do that for the last 2 years. So I think I was also really lucky, to be honest.
I think they were lucky, Gabrielle. And yes, you did hear that right. For the last 2 years, right? These things are not done in a week. This is a huge piece of work. So I just want to lead the applause before we even get started for the team and offer thanks on behalf of the community to everyone in community who contributed to PMBOK 8, not just the guys on this call, but the whole team. It was a huge effort. And by the way, anybody who has not been to Lithuania, which I'm going to guess is most of the people on this call, I have to say it's one of my favorite places that I've been to in recent years. I've had the privilege of speaking at the Bridge Conference in Lithuania, keynoted there last year or the year before, can't remember now, and been there 3 times, I think. And it is just beautiful. The people are warm, friendly. Skip the pink soup. That's all I can say, right? Everything else is great, but skip the pink soup. Right, let's move on. Jesse, go ahead. Same question to you, my friend.
Well, greetings, everybody. My name's Jesse, and I work in a variety of industries, helping organizations change. Business transformation, agile transformation, digital transformation, working with everyone from the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States to the local public school district to BAE systems And I got involved in this project because I was the only one who believed in the last PMBOK. If any of you were paying attention in 2021, the PMBOK 7th edition was very controversial because it threw away all of the things that we were trained on. Those inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, and those knowledge areas and process groups. In 2021, they all went away, and everyone just said, "What are you doing?" So I was out campaigning, explaining how you could use the PMBOK 7 to craft an approach to a project. And because I was the only one doing this at the time, PMI approached me and said, we need someone to do the 8th edition to take us from to bridge the old world and the new world. Would you be willing to chair this? And I said, okay, I'll try it. I asked 4 other people to join me as co-chair. Every single one said, no way. No way. So I had to lean into this knowing that whoever volunteered to join this effort truly had a passion for difficult projects. So that's a little bit of a tip to let you know what Mike and Gabriele are capable of. They knew what they were getting into, and they said yes, whereas some of my other colleagues were just not. I don't see how this is another disaster, Jesse. It's going to be a disaster. You know it. Why are you doing it? So that's how I came into it. I was voluntold.
Excellent. I love that. I love that. And I dare say we might touch on some of those controversial changes as we move forward. I know I've certainly had an earful from a few people because I'm a bit of a champion for PMBOK 8 and the direction it's heading. And I know that the journey's not over yet, right? There'll be a PMBOK 9 at some point, and the journey will continue as it should. So fantastic, Mike. Over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so I'm self-employed in this project portfolio space. It's my professional passion. I've been doing it for almost 15 years. And I left the cushy world of W-2 jobs, that's what we call cushy jobs in the US, to do it, thinking that I would never make anywhere near. I would have to lower my quality of life, lower my standard of living, and accept the poor man's fate, because nobody cares about PMOs and project portfolios, and I'd be lucky if I could make a living at all. And unfortunately, it has worked out to the point where I wanted to leave a lasting impact and maybe write sort of a final swan song book before I retire, at which point Jesse reached out to me, since we've known each other for a bit, and said, "Now, Mike, you only get like 10,000 people to read that book. Help me write a book where millions of people might read it." And I was like, "Oh, really? What book is that?" He said, "Oh, the next edition of the PMBOK Guide." I was like, "That's a joke, right? You're kidding." Like, that's I can think of 5,000 things I would rather do with my volunteer time than a PMBOK Guide. And about 15 minutes later, he convinced me that this might actually be a great way to leave a lasting impact. So thank you, Jesse. You're a phenomenal sales guy, even if the other people turned you down. And side note, well, two side notes. PMBOK 7 said, for the first time in any PMBOK guide, and the first time in many PM circles I've traversed, project management is a system for value delivery. Why did it take 7 editions to say that simple phrase that we all hopefully intuitively grasp? But then the challenge was, okay, let's make it more real for people. That's great as a mindset shift. Thank you, PMBOK 7, for helping us reorient the mindset. But now, how do we teach, say, a junior project manager who's just getting into it for the first time, how to take that and actually make it real and do it? So that was one of our primary challenges in PMBOK 8, and I am all for that. My other side note is Jesse's modest. He'll never tell you that he has now contributed as an author or co-author or chair to half of the existing PMBOK guides.
Wow, I did not realize that. That's amazing.
5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, it's.
Well, you're only like 12 years old for number 1, right?
A glutton for punishment. Another note about Mike, me kind of convincing Mike to be a part of this. I convinced him to apply. So just a quick note that the way that you get involved in this is not by being friends with Stuart. The way that you get involved in this is by submitting an application to PMI's volunteer website and making a case. And side note, so here's my side note, Gabriela's application was the last one we accepted out of hundreds upon hundreds of applications. She got in right at the deadline. So she's the PhD in submitting right at the last possible responsible moment, and as a result, we had the benefit of finding her and bringing her onto the team. So
perfect example of just-in-time delivery.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Okay, let's move on. So I've got a bunch of questions, but actually I'm going to kick off with a question from Guy Wolf, because it's going to flow into some of the other stuff that we want to talk about. So first of all, Guy, I didn't know that you were a fellow nuclear physicist. I may have gone through it a little bit after you, but not that far after you. So Guy says, is my PMBOK edition 5 as obsolete as my 1970s textbook on nuclear physics? Should I just throw it away and get a hard copy of number 8? So Jesse, since you've been involved in so many of them, I'm going to put that question to you first.
Oh my goodness. So Guy, you will be, I think, comforted to hear that one of the people who declined to join us on this adventure is one of my favorite project managers in the world. His name is SK Core, and he builds airports. And he's the PM behind the newest airport in Southeast Asia, I believe in Cambodia. and he told me when he declined because he was a little bit busy building an airport. But he told me, he said, the 7th edition is just not helpful to what I do. I use the 5th edition to teach all of my PMs what the expectations are for this program. And we have multiple work streams, and all those PMs need to be really good at their jobs and their work streams. And it made sense to me because the 6th edition was a little bit bloated. It was a little bit too big. It had a lot of duplication in the content because it was the first time that we had separated the PMBOK guide into an ANSI standard as well as a body of knowledge. And so I wouldn't say that the 5th edition is obsolete. I would say that it served as inspiration for a lot of us for many decades. I would instead say that I would keep it alongside your collection of other books. You might find that the 8th edition treats some of the same topics a little bit interestingly and differently, but then like SK, who's one of the best in the business, you might find that you go back to your old faithful from time to time to share it with a colleague.
Brilliant. What a great answer. So I'm going to add a bit of color, and bear in mind, I wasn't on the committee. I'm not on the team. I'm not in the pay of the PMI. Of course, I volunteer like so many others, right? In my own way. So this is how I see it, right? Is that the old PMBOKs were really built to be the absolute gold standard of everything you would need to run any project in the world, especially big ass projects like building airports, right? But most project managers in the world don't build airports. They run much smaller projects. And so to me, what the PMI has done is they have created a specific certification for people who build airports. I can't remember what it's called. Ben Breen is the guy at the PMI that drives it.
It's the PMI CP, construction.
Thank you. There you go. That's the one. So Ben's going to give me grief when he sees me next for not remembering the name of it, but there you go. So they've created a specific certification for people who build airports, not and other other types of capital project are available, which means that the PMBOK guide can kind of reposition itself to be a more flexible tool, a more usable tool, more accessible tool for the whole community, for the rest of the community. That's the way I see it. That may not be the way that you guys positioned it internally, but that's the way I see it.
Gabriele, what do you think about this? Because you've worked in a variety of industries, I think probably more than most of us.
I don't think that most of you, but yeah, I worked in energy industries, different types of like hydrogen, like solars, batteries, and also clinical research, also startups, real estate, and manufacturing. But what I learned, and I wouldn't say throw away, just collect them, because someday later on, 20, 30 years later on, you might sell it for a huge amount of money. And if you can get Jesse's signature on each, that would be even better, And for me personally, when I took my certification for instance, portfolio management by PMI as well, I actually used the previous versions to better understand the concepts, because we don't need to repeat ourselves because it's already written. So, but in some cases, if for me, I'm not a native speaker of English, we don't have a translation of PMBOK or portfolio or different standards to my language to better understand the concepts that we don't even have like the similar words in my Lithuanian language. So it's better to have like additional references of older books and standards that you can use as a learner. And I would say don't throw it away, just keep it. And also coming back about being lucky, actually it was Lee Lambert who was the reason that I signed for PMBOK, because I saw his post on Facebook that he reminded that everyone can apply. And I just applied, and I never dreamed ever in my life that this would happen. I applied, and Jesse and Josh scheduled the meeting, and actually I forgot the meeting, and it was like 8 p.m. Friday, and I'm sitting with my husband, and I'm like, okay, like let's watch a movie, eat some popcorns and stuff like that, and then I checked my phone, and it was like 15 minutes before the meeting, and I was like, okay, let's do that, and when Jesse asked me what I didn't like and if I would change something, I was like radically honest that for me personally, 7th edition wasn't that actionable and usable in different kind of projects, because, for instance, as you mentioned before, there are different standards for SCP, for construction professionals, but also what we agreed when we came up to write the standard in Los Angeles for the first time when we met the whole team, we agreed that even the schools, even the pupils, the students are having the projects. You used this concept like so widely, and we cannot, be so close-minded that the projects would be, only mega huge infrastructures. There are like lots of change management that also involves projects. And what we also did change within the PMBOK 8th edition, we included the family as a stakeholder that might be influenced by the project or might have influence by the project. And what we wanted to say in that matter, that the projects could be like really different kind of initiatives. And going further, we will explain how we also change the project definition. So that's
excellent. Well, so we've sort of slipped into the next question, which is great. So Mike, I'm going to come to you. Famously, PMBOK 8's got more input than any of the previous books. Something like 48,000 different bits of information came in. I can't imagine handling and sifting through all of that. So based on all of that input, what were some of the goals that the team had putting together the document? We've touched on some of them so far, but what are some of the goals? What was it that you were really trying to get to the heart of based on all that feedback?
So some of it, was as you might expect, right? Just general voice of the customer stuff, like don't make it 3,000 pages, right? But do make it substantive enough to be useful, even for a junior PM and even on small projects. And oh, by the way, we kind of liked some of the stuff from the previous editions that was thrown away in the seventh edition. Some of that stuff is useful. In fact, can you extend it, right, and take it further? So it was just sort of good market research from my point of view. I think on top of that, there's a very interesting commonality that Jesse and the PMI product owner, Josh, had in mind. You can correct me if I'm getting this wrong, Jesse. When they recruited the team, or when they reviewed all the applicants and decided who to interview and went through the whole process of down selecting to the final team of 12 or 13 folks. And that was, do you actually all share the same mindset that this is about unlimited upside, right? That we can engineer maximum positive contributions to our world through our cherished discipline of project management. And if you bring that, and of course, then come from 10 different countries and probably 30 different industries represented with our combined experience and on, like, do we have the right diversity of experience base and perspective along with that shared core mindset to really make a big impact here?
Love it. This idea of unlimited upside is something that Mike is really, really big into, introduced me to the idea. And I've become a bit of a convert to the point where I've bounced around on stages in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and other places, espousing a lot of those ideas that Mike planted in my brain, at least. So I'm glad that's outreaching a wider audience. So let's jump into some of the detail. So I'm sure everybody wants to know, what are the key differences from PMBOK 6, 7? 6 to 7 was a big jump, but then jumping into 8. What are some of the big differences, and why did you make those decisions? And remember, this is a PMO audience, so we're thinking from the PMO point of view. What should we be paying attention to as PMOs rather than just as project managers?
I'll start with some of the more some of the more expected changes, and then I'll let Mike and Gabriela talk about the more provocative changes. So Mike mentioned, and I put it in the comments, this is the most data-driven PMBOK in history. There were 48,000 data points that were collected through surveys before we even started the project. So on day one, we knew, let me just kind of cite some of the statistics. We knew that 2/3 of all project managers wanted to keep the system for value delivery. We knew that 88% of project managers found the principles to be very important, not just important, very important. And then at the same time, so those were the 7th edition features that were considered to be very helpful and relevant to all projects all of the time. If you're building airports or if you're installing a new HR policy, no matter what, you have to focus on what is the value of the work that we're doing rather than just get it done. And those principles help guide the thinking of project practitioners. However, the data also said we want to reintroduce those processes. 80% wanted to reintroduce the 5 fundamentals of project management: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And in fact, most of them, 2/3, said that these 5 things are agnostic of agile versus predictive versus hybrid. This has nothing to do with with methodology. This is every project in every industry, every time, should have some focus. It's a little foreshadowing on those things. And yet at the same time, 73% said they wanted those processes back. And so we had data that told us what our job was. It was explicitly preserve the system for value delivery and the principles from the 7th edition, and reintroduce in a fresh, modern way the 5 process groups, and then the 40 or so processes, again, refined and updated and modernized. These were the things that were found to be like, we knew going into day one, this was going to be part of the project. So I'll pause there, Stuart.
That's awesome.
What
That's
jumps
awesome.
out at you about that?
And you know, hey Jesse, can you turn the enthusiasm up a bit? We haven't quite got enough enthusiasm coming across here. Gabriela, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, for me as a manager of PMO, also portfolio manager, for me it's also really important to have those processes, because basically we are the people who are establishing the policies, we are writing the documentations within different organizations, and we need that materials that we could count on and to have standardized. But what I really liked, and we had really interesting discussion on that, is project definition. What is the project? Because I don't know what about you guys, but for me, I haven't seen so many unique projects, to be honest. Usually the context is unique, but for example, my company is doing some pipes for district heating and hot water. Sorry everyone on my team, but it's not unique, you know. Putting some pipes under the ground is not unique, and we do like different streets, different we involve different communities, but still the project is not unique itself. But we cannot say that it's not a project, because it has the beginning, it has the end, it has the budget, it has the team, also the goals, and also the metrics that we are counting. But the definition itself, I think now what we have made is more clear, that you're not building the rocket or going to Mars like every time. And it's more useful for everyday folks that are project managers or PMOs and having like wide variety projects within their portfolio. What is the project? And also the word endeavor, that wasn't changed for a really long time. It was changed and to initiative, because I think mentally we use that word quite commonly, and we use it like as a synonym to what the project is within the company. So I think this change also is more about being user friendly, that the PMBOK as a foundation for project management, for PMOs, for portfolios as well management, should be like more relatable to folks from all over the globe, and the language should be understandable. For me personally, I cannot normally say the word endeavor, and I already explained that to Jesse and other folks. For me, it's hard to pronounce the word, not being the like native speaker.
Yeah, brilliant.
So it occurs to me that maybe not everyone knows that the definition of project was changed with the release of PMBOK 8.
Yeah, Mike, go for it, because Jenik was asking that very question.
Yeah,
so Mike, I'm going to come to you. So give us that. And then what I would like to take it to is building on what Gabriela just said. If you could kind of give us an idea of what you think a PMO needs to do about it, right? Because all this stuff's changed. So what, if you're running a PMO, what do you need to do to empower your delivery teams to actually embrace this stuff and get value from it? So let's kick off with the definition, and then we'll go into that stuff.
Yeah, so if you're an old PM like me and you've been doing this a long time, you know the definition that PMI has offered has stayed relatively stable for 40 plus years, and that is a temporary initiative, or sorry, temporary endeavor. Sorry, Gabriele, temporary endeavor undertaken to generate a unique product, service, or result. So as Gabriela was just saying, it's not the uniqueness of the product, service, or result that necessarily captures the essence. It's that the context is often, maybe always unique, even if only minimally so. But the point is, we're trying to get more value out of it than what we sacrificed in the first place, right? And that's the essence of what we're trying to get at here. So you see Laura Roversi posted in the chat what the new definition is. Well done, Laura, you're paying attention. And our challenge wasn't just to craft some new definition. Our challenge was to make it real for people. What techniques exist that might actually help me engineer a maximum value outcome for my project? And hint, hint, it might not be just don't ask questions and do your scope, schedule, cost baseline and that's not, it's above your pay grade. No, you're the one closest to your baseline, I hope. You're the one that understands what the business stakeholders actually need, I hope. And therefore, you are uniquely positioned to drive a maximal value outcome, I hope.
Yeah, or at least you're plugged into the stakeholders who you're delivering the value to, so you ought to be able to figure it out, right? That's part of what being a project manager is. So if that's the new definition, and we've got a new PMBOK, what do you think that the PMO leader needs to start doing to embed these changes, to adopt and embed these changes in their teams?
In my mind, there has to be a sense of discipline or rigor in how we actually engineer the highest possible value outcome, right? So there have been techniques that have been around for 30 plus years to do exactly that, and they've never made it into a PMBOK guide until now. Okay, so we won't bore you with all the details there, but suffice to say something simple like, well, if I go over budget to accelerate the schedule by a month, might that actually be a better ROI? Right? And again, classically trained PMs were trained not to even ask that question. How dare you suggest that it might be a good idea to go over budget, right?
Yeah.
I
can't quite. Kayang just said, so it's about realizing benefits, right? And I'd say it's more than that. It's about maximizing benefits.
Right. Because since all projects are investments, not every investment pays off the way you imagine it should or could.
Yeah.
Right. So from a portfolio point of view, some will fall short of their benefits, right? For reasons that might be no fault of your own or of the organization's. It's just, that's what happens in the world and in life. Therefore, we better have other project investments that far exceed the target benefits, right? So we're always looking, like any sane or rational investor, to balance risk across a portfolio and to maximize the ROI of that portfolio, even if you measure the return in a non-financial way.
So I want to add two follow-up comments on this. Mike mentioned the triple constraint, scope, schedule, cost. And that's how that's like so deeply embedded in our tradition as a community and as a profession. And the concept of a triple constraint has been obsolete for the last 16 years. In the 2009 fourth edition of the PMBOK guide, we introduced multiple constraints, including risk, quality, compliance, where there's no diagram anymore of the iron triangle. And so for the last 16 years, the idea has been that there are multiple expectations around a project. And then the second point around that, we illustrated profoundly the ultimate example is the Sydney Opera House. So if you haven't read the history of the Sydney Opera House, it is one of the worst projects of all time. The architect won a Nobel Prize for the design of the building. And then during its construction, there was a riot by the workers who took over the construction site and held it hostage. The architect was fired by a new parliament member, an MP, who wanted to make a statement about how bad the project is. It was 10x over budget. It was like 17x over schedule. And it is heralded as one of the greatest achievements of humankind. And it's a UNESCO heritage site. So sometimes the value far exceeds the constraints that we've been given, and it's our jobs as leaders to make the point: is this an existential project? In Boston, in the city of Boston, the United States, the Big Dig was one of the most infamous projects.
Dude, I lived through that thing. Oh my God.
And the idea was, let's take this large flyover freeway and put it underground in tunnels so that all the vehicles now could go in tunnels, and then we would free up the skyline. And it just, people died during construction of this project, and it still kept going despite being way too expensive and having casualties, because it was an existential project for the very identity of the entire city and a major metropolitan, say one of the most populous cities in the world. So sometimes it's our job to zoom out to the bigger story. What is the bigger story of your project? And this is a new expectation that is becoming increasingly commonplace in every industry on project professionals.
And I would add, Jesse, from a stakeholder's point of view, it's not new. They've always demanded that from us. We just never gave it to them.
Yeah,
100%.
At least not
100%.
as an industry. Some rare exceptions intuitively got it. Great.
100%. Yeah, it's always been about. I mean, the number of people over the last on various LinkedIn posts who say things like, "Oh, this new thing about value," right? No, it's not new. It's always been about delivering value. We as a community, I'm not sure we focused on the right things in the past. Always, not always. But having said that, everybody goes on a journey, right? You start from where you are, and in the early days of project management, the basics was just getting any kind of control over projects, right? So that's okay. That's good to start there. But it was, you wanted that control so that you could deliver the value, which brings us to the value discussion. So again, those of you who know me know I'm a little bit kind of duck crazy. This particular duck, by the way, sits on my shelf, waiting for the next conference I go to, where Lenka, the chief of staff for the PMI, this is Lenka's duck. So Lenka, if you're listening, this is the one I told you about. This is on my shelf waiting for you. So the idea of the ducks is that your projects are like ducks, right? Your stakeholders, your executives really don't care about your project. They don't care about your Gantt chart. They don't care about your own value report. They don't care about any of that. Waterfall, Agile, don't care. They don't care if you have a boy duck or a girl duck. They just want eggs. They want the value of projects. So let's stay with value for a little while. And Gabriela, we've not been to you for a little while. So Gabriela, tell us what some of the big differences are in PMBOK 8 around value and how we're going to protect and deliver that value. And again, this is the first PMBOK guide, I think, that has a section on PMOs. So again, with a focus on what do the PMOs on this call need to be doing to protect that value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically, as PMOs, as PMO leaders, what we, especially within the companies that are focusing on construction industrial projects, usually the list of the projects or initiatives within the portfolio are related to CapEx investments, capital expenditures. But what we did with this change of definition, also with the appendix of PMO, we focus on the value and what it means that the projects that might not be traditional CapEx projects should also or may be involved within the portfolio if it brings value. For instance, I had like several within different companies, I had issues where to put this kind of projects where we are doing like internal changes, like where we have like, for instance, different ways of working for supply chain operations when it comes to people, like FTEs and things. I couldn't put that project within my portfolio because it wouldn't stand the classical, triple constraint things, but it was still change and a huge change within the organization. And what we focus now is that different kind of projects, initiatives could be involved within the portfolio. And also PMO is no longer folks that are just tracking the progress, doing the reports or establishing some policies. Basically now PMO means that you are related to value, gatekeeper of the value, if I can call that. And also that the PMO is no longer focusing, about being only assistant or directive PMO with the this new addition. What we also mentioned not trying to be too prescriptive, that PMO could have different settings, and it should be related to what organization really needs, to tailor the PMO to the needs. So basically the client is in the center, and if your client is saying that you as a PMO leader, you need to focus on IT tools to automate, the reports, automate decision making, to have like data driven decision making. So as a PMO, you should apply to this kind of client requirements. So I think this is also a huge change. And what I really liked with this PMBOK 8th edition, that we worked quite in line with PMO guide folks that were establishing that guide. We didn't saw them or hear them. I still don't know who are like actual people. I haven't seen them face to face. But we try to be quite open, because we have like separate document that is like really well made and like really has like great examples and suggestions for PMOs. And we didn't want to be like so specific within our guide, because not every organization might have a PMO. It might be called like value deliver office or transformation office or whatever. But the emphasis is on value. It doesn't matter how you call it. You can call it XMO or whatever. So I think that's also really important. Not the title, but the meaning behind. And that the role is more strategy aligned, as it never has been, because basically we are the gatekeepers, that all the projects should be aligned to the strategy. And I think that's important. And this is why we make the reports and different processes, or do the compliance checks or audit checks.
And sort of building on that, right? If the project is there to maximize the value, then the portfolio that is there to maximize the return across the portfolio, right? The value across the portfolio. And so that means that suddenly portfolio management is integral to project management, right? It's not some optional thing. Doing portfolio management is kind of the first step. It's the precursor. It's the stage that we set before the players walk onto the stage, right? How lyrical is that? And so that leads nicely into Will, Will, I think you owe me an email, actually. I've pinged you a bunch of times. But anyway, sorry, set that aside. Will, hi, welcome. Will's got a couple of questions here, right? And I think they're both really, really interesting. First of all, he's saying, how do you come up with a common currency for value? And, should it be financial ROI or something like that? And then he's got a follow-on question, which is around how do you measure this success thing, this value thing, in the context of value streams, right? So continuous investment, value streams or product or something like that. So Mike, can you take the first one of those? How do you come up with that common? How would you recommend people come up with that common currency for measuring and determining value, contribution to strategy?
A perfect commercial for TransparentChoice, right? So one of the most challenging things to do in selecting the highest, the highest ROI projects is, we have something that might generate lots of profit and something that might improve employee morale and welfare. Now, we know from lots of studies that high employee morale and welfare does tend to lead to higher profits. But what's the exact connection and how much additional profit? Well, who's to say? And who's to say that we'll get the industry average in our context, right? So if both of those projects cost the same thing, how do we choose between the two if we must choose just the one? Well, TransparentChoice actually exists to solve that, to answer that question, right? To compare the apples and oranges, especially if I prefer bananas or something else, right? So that way there's some way to harmonize the sense of value according to the subjective opinions of the leaders of the organization. Note, I said subjective opinions, which for the financial analysts among you, or people that really love numbers, that might sound wrong. But the reality is value is in the eye of the beholder. And yes, you can measure things like profit and all of that, but before we actually achieve the profit or the benefit of the employee morale and welfare boost or whatever, we have to actually assess how much of that we think we might get. And that's inherently subjective, right? It comes from people's intuition and experience, right? And so we want to harvest and harness that collective wisdom of the leadership team that we've asked to address this question. And the software TransparentChoice is designed to do exactly that. I will add a second thing that is not a commercial for TransparentChoice, and it's not in the PMBOK guide, but that's only because we would have needed a few hundred more pages, maybe a few thousand more pages, and we didn't want to get overly prescriptive. And that is, take Jesse's example of the Sydney Opera House. Two things. One, there probably is a minimum threshold of value we want to see. And if the budget went 100 times over and the schedule took 100 years, we probably would fall below that threshold, even though it is a UNESCO site that has all this enormous value and probably tourism and who knows what else. And so I find that putting the target value that we hope to achieve and the minimum below which we refuse to accept can be very helpful when we're trying to be clear about,
Yes.
Hey, here's what we're after. And the sky, not even the sky is the limit. But if it ever falls below this threshold, we should kill it.
I want to build on that, Mike, because there's hi, I'm Jesse. I'm an agile practitioner, and one of the critiques that that we heard about this project was, oh my goodness, an agilist is going to be the chair of the PMBOK guide. We're all going to hell. Lions and tigers, lions and sheep are friends. Up is down, black is white. It makes no sense. And so one of the benefit or the benefits or the gifts that the agile movement has given to the project management community is it has awoken us to the market expectation around this conversation. We need to focus on the value for investment. We intentionally deferred the conversation in the PMBOK guide, the difference between outcome, benefit, value. There is a benefits realization practice guide that PMI publishes for those of you who are really interested in that level of nuance and that qualitative subjective conversation that you're having, Mike. But my critique of my own agile community is that we need to have measures. And the agile community, as good as they've done for highlighting the need for a value conversation, have failed miserably to provide any concrete measures or examples of how to measure value. And so Mike offered a really good example. Employee morale and welfare, employee net promoter score is a really good example. Another one might be a lagging indicator might be around retention and attrition. There are metrics that are specific to three different categories from where I sit. The first one that's obvious is the money category, ROI, net present value. If you're in a project that's looking to cut costs and then the amount of money you have to invest to cut those costs, is very straightforward. But to your point, sometimes it's a mission that we're serving, and the mission is around how many metric tons of carbon are we going to remove out of the air with this new product with this new filter that we're going to install. Another one might be how many homeless people are we going to feed with this new government policy? And to your point, Mike, what is the minimum that we're going to target, the minimum that we're going to accept in that mission metric of value and impact versus the target? And then the third category is I think is the one that's most common for all of us that serve in PMOs and serve large organizations. And it's not, we may not have a project that has direct ROI. We may not have a project that has direct impact on the mission. Many of our projects, most of them, are about the mechanics of the organization. And so I would say, what are the KPIs that we're going to impact? Every operations team has their operational KPIs that they're held accountable to by their executives. So any project should, in some cases, what's the lead time for that HR team to hire somebody? And in some cases, what's the cycle time for a product to get through the mission, the factory floor? So whether you have a money project, a mission project, or a mechanics, organizational mechanics project, there's some measure that you can find that can make the case. Now, there's no universal index on that. There's still going to be that apples, oranges, and bananas comparison, but there are numbers that we can bring to bear.
So as Mike said, this is our wheelhouse, which is why I'm trying not to get involved, because if I do, this conversation will go way too long. But the one thing I will say is that that definition of value is really key. One of the resources on our website, Lenora, if you're still on, could you go find the link to the criteria ebook, please, and drop it into the chat? So we have actually a couple of ebooks. There's kind of the beginner's guide and the more advanced guide into project criteria, project prioritization criteria. That's how we define value. This is how we define the contribution to those three buckets that Jesse just talked about. And that ebook is completely free, and it'll really walk you through the whole thing. There's something like 82 template criteria that you might use. We're not saying use them. Don't use all of them, please. But it'll hopefully act as inspiration. So if you're interested in that, go download the guide. Lenora, if you could go find that and drop it in the chat, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. Just really quickly, I've got one more question to follow on. But just before I do, people are starting to drift off because they've got other things to do. This session is being recorded, and you will receive an email from one of my team called Preeti, Preeti. So look for an email from Preeti at TransparentChoice, and she'll send across a bunch of materials and follow up on the recording and all that kind of good stuff. So there'll be an information pack coming through from Preeti. So look for that. If you see this crazy name, Preeti, she's based out in India. She's actually just last week moved back down to Hyderabad from the Himalayas. So she's been with us for years. So if you see this crazy Indian person, it's not somebody trying to steal all your pension money. It is in fact one of my team. So please be nice to her. She's lovely. Fabulous. So we've been talking about value, and we've talked a little bit about value to the business, right? So that's something that your execs going up the chain, your stakeholders going up the chain care about. What about the PMs? So again, we're talking to a PMO audience. Do you have any thoughts on how to engage the PM community? If you're the PMO leader, how to engage the PM community in your organization to first of all get them excited and interested in PMBOK 8, but then to actually get some juice from it, right? To get some value from it. Gabriela, you're nodding along with that one. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, so basically what I also liked about this edition, that we also gone from the titles again. What is the project manager? Because within different organization, the organization might have like 10 people, and they might not have like the money or the resources to hire like separate PMs, and it might be like some person who is having different title, but he's doing the function. So basically within the PMBOK, what we changed, that we don't make an emphasis that there is a project manager and a project team and yada yada yada, but there is a project management team that could be called differently. It could be called like a project leader. It could be like different position. It could have like some more agile, specific language, like product owner, different type of names. And for us, what was most important was the competencies that these people bring and responsibilities. And we also talked really a lot about accountable leadership and owning, what you do, owning your project. So I think when PMOs talk with the project managers, or how they are called, we don't care, as long as the person cares about and owns the project that he is doing, and the deliverables and the results are there, I think that's fine. And I think here we opened more discussion on that topic, and it's more flexible. We are more flexible within different kind of organization, and we are not like, waterfall, agile, or something. And what I also liked about this edition, and lots of people mentioned when we had like the survey before the PMBOK development, people demanded the examples. We tried to even put more examples, but they were like taken out because we didn't want to write 1,000-page book. But we tried to, after each bigger section, to provide some examples for the people, for the folks that work with real projects, not theoretical projects, to understand what we really wanted to say. So I think this is also useful for like folks that are doing the projects, not focusing on, like strategic alignment and things like that.
Awesome. And in case you haven't checked out Gabriela's profile, that is coming from the Project of the Year award winner, right? So, we should.
Sorry, Stuart, to interrupt you. I wasn't the winner. I worked in the company in the previous years. So sorry, I don't want to take the their pride.
I'm going to go with Mike, and we'll just kind of bow down and say we are not worthy to be on a call with Gabriela.
Come on.
So look, we're at the top of the hour. So Jesse, I'm going to give you the final word. Just any final thoughts that you'd like to share with everybody, and then I have two quick adverts before everybody disappears, which I hope you're going to be very interested in. Not necessarily transparent choice stuff, but other stuff around PMO.
I want to build
one quick thought, Jesse, and then I'll.
Yeah, I want to build on Gabriele's call to action for you as PMO leaders. The PMBOK is an important document, and many of your PMs may never have actually been exposed to it. And now is a great time to introduce them to both the rich heritage that we've had over the last 40 years with the PMBOK guide. It's coming up on its 40th anniversary. And also introducing more modern, contemporary, immediate marketplace guidance and expectations. It is not a cookbook. It is not a how-to guide. It is it's a guide on what to consider and why to consider you should be doing things. So the three of us invested 2 years of our lives making sure that we could have a positive impact on your PMO and your staff, your project management staff. So we encourage you to take a look at it, maybe even have a lunch and learn or a team conversation about it.
Awesome. Janik, I see your question there. You know how to reach me. Book time with me, and I'll take that one offline if you don't mind, because we're kind of at the top of the hour. So two very quick things from me before we all go. First one is the link that Lenora pasted is actually to book time with me or one of my team to basically walk through the case for change, the business case for the PMO. Right. So the PMBOK guide being released is a great opportunity to engage your leadership team in a conversation around what is the value of my PMO. And at conferences, the most common question that I get from people is, how do I get my execs' attention, or how do I get them to buy into my PMO? Some version of that question. So if you book a meeting with me, we've got this little workshop that we run through with people to help tell that story. And PMBOK is a golden opportunity for you to engage in that conversation. So please click on that. And then my second little advert is for the PMI 2 years ago bought the PMO Global Alliance. If you're not specifically a member of the PMO Global Alliance, go sign up for that now. And in March, towards the end of March, the PMO Global Alliance is hosting an event in San Diego, California, which is the Unconference. So this is, there's a little bit of normal speaking and panels and all that kind of good stuff, but most of the content is real hands-on workshops with facilitators walking rooms full of people, PMO leaders, all of them, through ideas like, how do we actually deliver successful business transformation? Or how do we lead in an ESG world? Or how do we make sure we as a PMO are delivering value to our customers, to our stakeholders? That was one of the sessions I led last year in Istanbul. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to be leading a couple of workshops on the business transformation track. So it's going to be a lot of fun. If you can go, I would strongly recommend it. It's not like the Global Summit where you've got 4,000 people, but only a small number of them are PMO leaders. This is all PMO leadership typically at this event. And it's a golden opportunity to not just interact with people, self-styled thought leaders, but also with your peers, and to get ideas and inspiration from the people out there doing the job with you. So if you can, I would go and take a look at that. If you look, PMO Global Alliance Unconference in San Diego in March. It's going to be great, a great event. Hope to see some of you there. Excellent. So it just remains to thank you all for coming, but most of all, Jesse, Mike, and Gabriela, not just for turning up today, but for the effort, the massive effort you've put in over the last 2 years to create this thing called the PMBOK 8 guide. So thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks very much, everyone.